Hello, adventurer. It's good to see you. You have made it to the morning grind.
Welcome, welcome.
It's the live stream at the beginning of the Geekverse, where we talk about all types of topics in geekdom, gaming, and fantasy, with an emphasis on being constructive and creating the things that we want to exist in the world.
It's all on the grind, Sizemore. Can't be too fine, can't be too coarse.
That's exactly right. There are a lot of adventures to be had today. Dungeons to explore and monsters to slay, and who knows what a random encounter might send our way. That's why we have to prepare, so settle in now for the morning grind with your favorite beverage in hand.
Tea? Or maybe something a little stronger. I've got a few bottles of the old Wynyard left.
Whatever you want. Pull up a chair.
Dude.
If you're feeling fancy, how about a cappuccino? Or a frappuccino? Or how about an espresso?
Just tea, thank you.
Sounds good to me, Gandalf. Whatever you want. I'm just glad you're here.
Everyone is welcome. You can just watch if you want. You don't have to worship anything you don't want to worship.
Thank you, Mike. But be forewarned.
Sometimes we get really strange characters around here.
Wait, what's that you say? Why can't you come and be a part of the stream?
My wife would disown me.
Oh no, I bet she'll be fine with it. Come on in.
Am I scared for my safety? No.
What are we supposed to do?
Everybody do the secret handshake.
Secret cultist handshake.
Oh, now do wizards who love each other.
This, my friend, is a science.
I still don't have gifts, but it's fine.
It's all on the grind, son. Can't be too fine, can't be too coarse.
Dude, this would be a sick place to bring the band.
Indeed it would be, Dave. It really would. I'm seeing more people coming in. Welcome, glad to have you here. Oh, look, here's someone new.
Is this the cultist meetup?
Yes it is.
Come to hang out? Please accept me. I have nothing else.
Okay, we accept you. Everyone's welcome here.
Brought some snacks.
Well, that makes things even better.
You want some coffee? I don't drink coffee. You sure? It's cultist coffee. What makes it cultist coffee? I'm a cultist and I'm drinking it. Oh. Then I'll have some.
What exactly is going on here?
I'm seeing more people coming in. Welcome. It's so great to have you. Oh, and look, here comes another stranger.
Can we help you?
Yes, fellow cultists. I could really use some food.
Oh yeah? Welcome. We have donuts.
Oh, it's me. I'm glad I'm here. I'm sure you have a few questions for me, though.
What's your name? Who do you work for? What god do you worship?
Great questions, Rob.
I'm Steve King, and I worship Nyarlathotep.
No, not really. I'm just Heath, and I won't be worshiping anything this morning. But I will be your host. Welcome to the office. We're going to have a great time. I've got my coffee ready, because now it's time for the morning grind.
If you could become a fish, that would be amazing. Then I could command you with my mental fish powers.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning and happy Independence Day. I hope that you are having a good holiday or that you will be shortly. I know lots of people are probably going out for, if you're here in the United States anyway, you might be going out for lunch or dinner barbecues and then fireworks this afternoon. I went and did a bunch of Independence Day stuff Sunday. Went out to see a fireworks show that was happening on Sunday night, and so we got together with family and basically had a picnic on Sunday. So I'm not sure what I'm going to be doing here today. There's a fireworks show up in Birmingham that I might go to, Thunder on the Mountain, but I hadn't really decided. I feel like I've been going up to Birmingham quite a bit lately, so I may spend the time just sitting here writing today. And plus, I'm thinking about going and playing Dragon Strike again on Friday with my nephew, so I might not be doing the morning grind on Friday because I'd be up there when my brothers go to work to take care of them. So I hope that everybody, and I figured, so this might be a shorter one today. I've got a kind of shorter topic that spawns off of our topic yesterday. Yesterday, we were talking about West Marches style campaigns. And one of the things we need in order to do West Marches style campaigns is smaller dungeons. And somebody brought up this 5-room dungeon design technique. I forget who it was, but thank you. I thought we would go ahead and take a look at the 5-room dungeon design technique. I don't think it's going to take a whole lot of time, so we can just look at it today and then go have fun for our holiday. So good morning, Zero the Blade. Good morning. Oh, and Micah and Lynn and George. Welcome, welcome. We've got Stray here. Welcome. Stray right here. Mike, good morning. Good morning. Helsente's ghost is here. Not late today. Vision is here. Yes. Vision says, good morning, folks. Glad to see you. Please do like and subscribe. Please do like and subscribe. And I'm going to also put the Raven Keep Discord server link in here. If you missed it yesterday, we were also talking about some software to run a little tavern to get together in. And probably today's not a great day to do that. Even that, so there'll be no table talk tonight. It's Tuesday. Ordinarily, we have a table talk tonight, but it's Independence Day, so I didn't try to get anybody together to have a discussion tonight, since I figured that a lot of people, I mean, like the guests are probably doing something tonight, and a lot of people are going to be gone for fireworks and things like that anyway tonight. So no table talk tonight on account of the Independence Day holiday. Another old school sort of topic. Yes. Hey, Brent, welcome, welcome, welcome. But tomorrow, I'm wondering, we need to take a look. I need to have some people in the software, in the tavern, and see how it works and make sure that it's working well. And there are even some games that you can play in there. So I might do that tomorrow. I might put out some kind of call for that tomorrow. Maybe the channel members or something like that. We will see. Vision says, great topic. Small dungeons sometimes turn out to be the best dungeons. Micah says, I'll be working through the night, so probably some food at work for the sake of working on the holiday. Probably free burgers and hot dogs or brats. Free hamburgers and hot dogs are good, and brats. Yeah, it's Hal Sente says, how many rooms did Norman Keeps have? Yeah, that's true. Sometimes not very many. TSL Frontman is here. Good morning. Good morning. Yep, let's breathe and sip. Absolutely. Let's do this right now. Here we go. I've got some Sprite Zero this morning, so here we go. Let's breathe and sip. 2 deep inhales, and then complete exhales, and then take a sip of your favorite beverage. So here we go. And sip. Very good, very good. I was working some more on this miniature technique. I posted some pictures in the Discord server. I need to post some more. But like I was saying, one of my ideas here for painting up some miniatures, because I'm painting up these Dragon Strike miniatures, and it would be great to have them ready for Friday if I'm going to go and play Dragon Strike again. I'm trying to do a modified slap chop technique here, where all I'm doing basically is taking instead of going black primer and then a heavy medium gray dry brush and then a light white dry brush, that was just taking a lot of time. I was like, can I do this with just a medium gray base coat as a primer and then doing some heavy white on top of that, and then using either contrast paints from GW or speed paints from Army Painter, just put one color on top of that, and does that work? So I started being able to apply some colors last night after I had gotten work done. So I spent about, I don't know, an hour, maybe an hour and a half painting last night. And I was working on these. So these are just base coated gray with a little bit of white. And then this is actually mainly contrast paints on them. So these are the Dragon Strike Orcs. That's the orc flesh. I like green orcs. I should have known that this was going to be a very green color for skin, because GW orcs are very classically extremely green. And so I like green orcs, but actually I like a deeper, like olive tone to their skin, or darker tone. So this is fine for these. This is a test anyway. So they're quite bright, but I should have known that the GW orc flesh color green is very bright, but I think that did work pretty well. So all of these just have one actual color of paint on any part of the miniature. It's some type of speed paint. We've got the metallic speed paints now, but also a lot of contrast paints for the skin from GW and the clothing and things like that. So I think it worked reasonably well. I think, it did work reasonably well. These are perfectly good tabletop quality miniatures here. Although I'm not sure it's my favorite painting technique. But I was also, I'm going to experiment a bit more. I was also working on these bugbears. So I used the same technique here on these bugbears. So they were just the gray and then the white, and then put on speed paints or speed paints or contrast paints, just depending on where it was. I kind of like the color scheme of these guys. I've never painted some guys with this kind of color scheme, but I got 3 bugbears here. Actually, there are 4 bugbears. I forgot there was a 4th bugbear, so I'm having to paint him up separately. I got him on the table over here right now. But again, I think perfectly acceptable for tabletop quality miniatures. I kind of think I like the washes better, doing it with the wash, but that does take longer. But I think this is a perfectly acceptable kind of technique for tabletop quality miniatures, and a bit faster than having to do 3 coats of slap chop. 3 passes before you put on the color when you're doing slap chop. I still got plenty of, I got a whole bag of miniatures over here that have, these are from Advanced Hero Quest, and those were actually done black, gray, and then white. I just haven't gotten to start painting them yet. So I still have more slap chop in the classic color scheme to paint up. That's Advanced Hero Quest. But I had to put them aside. So we're going to keep going. Some of these paints, like one more thing, like some of these paints worked really well. Like here's my evil wizard. And like this red, that made a great cloak. This, what color is this? This is Aethermatic blue on his cloak. And that worked pretty well too. I mean, it's a very bright kind of white cloak, cape here. That worked. I really love the red. So some of these colors work better than others. But I wanted to do a purple one as well. And this is the purple contrast paint. And look, man, there is just no variation in that. So it also depends on what color paint. I'm tempted to actually repaint this guy from the start, because that just looks terrible. It just looks like a solid color. But these 2 colors, that actually worked with that technique really well. Very quick. All right, so that's a report on that. I'm going to do some type of, I've been taking some very, very casual video vlogs as I've been doing this, and I'll edit it together. All right, and put it out just as a YouTube video. But anyway. Hey, Andrew, welcome. And also Trobe 23Z. Yeah, I know, it didn't work at all. That color just does not work at all. I've got, there are some other color purples in speed paint. That's why I'm tempted to just completely redo that one, because there are some like mystic purple speed paints, and I'm like, they would definitely, like, something has got to do better, because that was a GW contrast paint purple. Did not work. Hell Sente says, I wonder what it would be like if I did 7 push-ups and then sipped. I'm sure a lot of us need to do that. I do. I'm back trying to lose a bunch of weight, and it wouldn't hurt me to do push-ups. All right, let's bring up this 5-room dungeon idea, because we were saying that if we were to run some type of Marches campaign, the West Marches style campaign, that one thing you need are 5-room dungeons. You need a lot of small dungeons. That way people can go out, and we did talk about, I want to come up with we need to look at good wilderness adventuring systems that don't take a whole lot of time. I mean, you really got to think about your game. If you're talking about 2 to 4 hours, but let's say you got 3 hours for a game, like, how are you going to be using that time? And actually, we were talking the other day about game structure, because we were talking about how phenomenally well we thought that 5 Candles was structured. I need to play that sometime. I got candles to play it with. We were talking about how phenomenally well we thought that that 5 Candles was structured for a horror game. But actually here in this case, what we need is a structure for basically an adventure game. Here, this is all coming around. There's all kind of connecting here. We need some kind of structure for an adventure game that fits in, let's say, a 3-hour block. 2 hours, some people might have to do it in, but that's not a lot of time. 4 hours, and some people may have as long as 4, but we'll say that's a game session. And what has got to happen in that game session? We've got to tell a story. Basically, you're trying to have an adventure story, right? You're trying to go on an adventure. Ideally, after every one of these West Marches sessions, you would feel like you had been out on an adventure, had a great time, and then but concluded that adventure, and then everybody gets back to home base, the town. Or I was thinking there's got to be some way to do that with like multiple havens. That gets a little more complicated. But especially if you're trying to if you're trying to go deeper into the wilderness or the frontier, then being able to having the players be able to establish like new home bases or new safe havens deeper into the wilderness. I haven't seen people talk about that specifically, but it seems like a natural idea. Atomic Rat says happy explosion day. But anyway, so the idea of structuring a game inside a session comes up again, and how important that is. So you can't have, I mean, first of all, you can't take forever getting to a dungeon. Like what would it be? Like let's say you've got your characters, and part of this is also what you're going to be doing. So when you sit down at the session, because you've either declared that at the end of the last session, or you've decided what to do over some other service like Discord or something like that. So when you sit down to play, let's say, all right, the game begins right now, and how long is it that you need to take in order to get to your destination? 30 minutes. And then you're going to spend 2 hours in the dungeon. That would be 2.5 hours. How long does it need to take to get back? So it'd be maybe if you spent 2 hours and 15 minutes, and then 15 minutes getting back. That's if getting back is important. If you're not just declaring that you're all the way back. Like, I don't think you need to spend more than 30 minutes in the wilderness. So what's the best system for 30-minute wilderness travel that's out there? Some people may already know or have some recommendations, like 30-minute wilderness travel, where it actually makes, because we want wilderness travel to be significant. We want it to be significant, but we don't want to be just, hey, random encounter. Now it's another random encounter if they don't do anything. Especially in like 5e where it's not really consuming a bunch of resources. Resource management is supposed to be I think is an important part of this, because you're supposed to be making choices. The wilderness travel should cause you to make choices, significant choices, maybe like 3 choices. Well, that's a way to break it down. What if there were some kind of game or wilderness travel where it's going to take you 30 minutes to get to most places? And in that time, you're going to make 3 critical decisions about something about where you're going. And so that would be, you got about 10 minutes worth of play time to do each one. So it's going to be a combat encounter. It's got to be short. And then where does that take you to? This takes you to some kind of dungeon here that's short. It can't be a mega dungeon. Although there are probably ways to do a mega dungeon in West Marches, but you'd have to have a home base that's safe right next to the mega dungeon. It's possible. But most of the time it's going to take you to some kind of smaller site, which this is the ultimate 5-room dungeon. And this is by John 4. And you can download his book here that's got this information on the 5-room dungeon and then a whole bunch of examples in it as well. So so let's see what he says about a 5-room dungeon. Vision says, yeah, I have to be honest, the cost, time, benefit, finished product analysis doesn't really add up for me when it comes to painting miniatures with speed paints. I don't write them off completely, but I don't go out of my way to use them either. Shorter time makes for impactful gameplay elements, TSL Frontman says. Something that long session games often muddle altogether. George says, 5e is based around an adventuring day, so encounters on the road should be part of the gaming day formula and included with the dungeon. Well, that's an interesting idea. I don't know that I've ever heard anybody actually say that directly. 5e is based around an adventuring day, so the encounters on the road should be part of the gaming day formula and included with the dungeon. So what you could do, just because your dungeon encounter, what you're doing is you're integrating the road encounter into the dungeon. And there's no reason you shouldn't be able to do that narratively as well, right? So if you are, if it's going to be a short dungeon, you have so many encounters, then a wilderness encounter should be relevant to your dungeon. I like that. I'm not a huge fan of random encounters. I'm not a huge fan. I understand why they exist. Danger, it's supposed to be representing danger. It's supposed to be consuming resources. If you're out wandering around and you're lost, you're more likely to run into things, and they're going to consume your resources, and you might not have enough of them to accomplish your, to get to your dungeon or accomplish your dungeon task or get back home. The problem is some games, they don't actually do that, because if you get all of your hit points and your spells back the next day anyway, that really doesn't matter that you used hit points and spells because you got them back. So that doesn't really work. It does work if you actually have to suffer some consequences because of that. That's when random encounters seem to work to me. But on the other hand, if you are, that maybe we should be thinking about, I like this a lot, thinking about the wilderness encounters assuming the wilderness travel goes well, the wilderness encounters being integrated narratively with the dungeon encounters, which that happens a lot. That does happen a lot in like adventure stories. If you're thinking about Indiana Jones, well, you've got encounters on the way to get to the dungeon, right? He's got things he's got to do in order to get to the dungeon. So I'm going to think more about that. Micah says 5-room dungeon, possible dungeon group set as combinations in a shifting mega dungeon a la Cube, the movie, would work for running Droon in my Legends of Lindia settings. I always found exploring or traveling on the road in a TTRPG and coming across a small dungeon with a fun little distraction for players. All right, let's see what this says. Welcome to 5E Dungeons, O Intrepid, 5-room dungeons, O Intrepid Game Master. Below is revealed my specific way to build sessions, adventures, and even campaigns using a simple design method that you can learn in just a few minutes. A complete 5-room dungeon method is laid out for you on this page. In addition, I've assembled a 137-page book brimming with 85 examples on 5-room dungeons, plus dozens of pages providing you 5-room dungeon design assistance and inspiration. You can get the 5-room dungeon book free when you subscribe to my weekly GM tips newsletter that goes deeper into adventure design, campaign building, and mastering the GM craft. But here's what it is. 5-room dungeons have a story baked in. You just have to fill in the blanks. A 5-room dungeon was my solution for combining the mythic story structure of legendary scholar George Campbell. Well, we talk about that quite a bit on Table Talk and story structure and stuff. So here, this idea of a structure to the story structure of the game kind of actually appears again. So that's interesting. As well as my quest for quick and easy adventure design. This simple framework gives you everything you need to build a great evening of adventure for your friends. Because it's a built-in story structure, which you'll find present in everything from Star Wars to Game of Thrones, you don't have to worry about how to build drama or hook characters deeper into your plot. The 5-room dungeon format has that baked in, plus clear guidance on what adventures to build and what kind they should be. Five-room dungeons aren't just dungeons. It's a bit of confusion. There's been a bit of confusion about how to use this quick adventure building method. When I invented this framework in 2002 or 2003, I was thinking it would work for all adventure types. I named it 5-room dungeons, which in hindsight is why so many game masters don't think this format works for their non-dungeon campaigns. But you can use this 5-room dungeon format for any type of adventure, including wilderness adventures and exploration. So we're just talking about chaining together like 5 different encounters according to a structure, right? City, town, and civilized adventures, role-playing adventures, science fiction, modern, steampunk, anime, and other genres. All game systems, D&D, Pathfinder, Fate, and so forth. Maybe we should think about it exclusively in terms of encounter. Let's say you got 3 hours, and how long do you want each encounter to take? Maybe half an hour. That means you got 6 encounters, but we could call them scenes. You got 6 scenes. How are you going to structure an encounter in 6 scenes, or structure an entire adventure in 6 scenes? What needs to happen? And maybe you've even got the sand timer, the hourglass with you, the 30-minute glass. Still, Mongoose says, would a breakfast nook count as a 6th room? So let's see. Why like 5-room dungeons? This format or creation method has several advantages. Any location. Though I call them 5-room dungeons, they apply to any location with 5 or so areas. They don't have to be fantasy or dungeons. They could take the form of a small spacecraft, a floor and a business tower, a wing and a mansion, a campsite, or a neighborhood. Short. Like many players dislike long dungeon crawls, and DMs like to switch environments up often. In addition, some players dislike dungeons altogether, but will go along with the play if they know it's a short romp. This helps ease conflicts between play styles and desires. Quick to plan. With just 5 rooms to configure, design is manageable and fast. Next time you're killing time, whip out your notepad and write down ideas for themes, locations, and rooms. Knock off as many designs as you can and choose the best to flesh out when you have more time for the next GM system. Easier to polish. Large designs often take a long time to complete, so long to complete that game night arrives before you can return to the beginning and do one more round of tweaking and polishing. The design speed of 5-room dungeons leaves most of the time to iterate. Easy to move. 5-room dungeons can squeeze into many places larger locations and designs can't. If your dungeon goes unused or you want to pick it up and drop it into a new path the PCs take, it's often to do that when wielding a larger crawl. Flexible size. They're called 5-room dungeons, but this is just a guideline. Feel free to make them 3 area locations or 10 cave complexes. The idea works for any small self-contained area. Easy to integrate. 2 to 4 hour dungeon romps. That's what we're looking for, right? Quickens flagging. A 2 to 4 hour dungeon romp quickens flagging campaigns and session pacing and can be squeezed into almost any sort of thread. It also grants a quick success or failure to keep the players engaged. This format is also easy to drop into settings with minimal consistency issues. So here is the 5-room dungeon format in detail. Tomocrat says, for West March, what about the idea of limited time to explore? Be it need to get back by dark or you have resources that's limited. I completely agree. But I like the idea of having limited resources. You got to come back with a certain amount. You only have a certain number of resources you can take with you. Yes, if you're here, thank you, Vision. Please do like and share. So room 1, entrance and guardian. There needs to be a reason why your dungeon hasn't been plundered before or why the PCs are the heroes for the job. Let me see if I can increase the size of this. There we go. A guardian or challenge at the entrance is a good justification why the location remains intact. Also, a guardian sets up early action to capture player interest and energize a session. 1-room challenge ideas. The entrance is trapped. The entrance is cleverly hidden. The entrance requires a special key, such as a ceremony, command word, or physical objects. The guardian was deliberately placed to keep intruders out, for example, a golem, robot, or electric fence. The guardian is not indigenous to the dungeon and is a tough creature or force who's made its lair in 1 room. The entrance is hazardous and requires special skills and equipment to bypass. For instance, radiation leaks, security clearance, wall of fire. Room 1 is your opportunity to establish mood and theme of your dungeon, so dress it up with care. Entrance and guardian. Room 2 is puzzle or role-playing challenge. The PCs are victorious over the challenge of the first room and are now presented with a trial that cannot be solved with steel. This keeps problem solvers in your group happy and breaks the action up for good pacing. Make Room 2 a puzzle, skill-based, or role-playing encounter if possible. Room 2 should shine the limelight on different PCs than Room 1, change gameplay up, and offer variety between the challenge at the entrance and the challenge at the end. Note, if Room 1 was this type of encounter, then feel free to make Room 2 the combat-oriented encounter. Room 2 should allow for multiple solutions to prevent the game from stalling. Lynn says, a good administrative assistant makes a fearsome guardian in modern settings. True, yes. George says, however, I've heard and read of many complaints against encumbrance and resource management rules. We have talked about that quite a bit here on the channel. Talked about what they are supposed to be doing and looked at a variety of different systems. I like slot-based encumbrance. I don't. Yeah, I'm against. I'm for only tracking what matters and doing it in something like a slot-based encumbrance way, but also something like, is it Blades in the Dark that uses some type of what type of? Actually, that could be a really good system to use when you're just talking about. All right, how well outfitted do you want all of your party to be when they're going out to this dungeon? And then you say this is the trade-off, that we're going to say that you're outfitted well and it's going to cost a certain amount of money, but then you're more likely to have all the items that you need. Whereas if you're not well outfitted, then you may be able to move faster, but you won't be able to be out in the wilderness as long unless you're hunting or something like that. And you're less likely to have the items that you need. Something like that could work very well. But yeah, that topic has come up quite a bit. And I'm against tracking everything that you've got pound by pound. Let me know if it's important, and if it's important, let's find a better way to track it. So, room ideas for room 2. Magic puzzle, such as a chessboard tile floor with special squares. An AI blocks access to the rest of the complex and must be befriended, not fought. A buzzer panel for all the apartments, but the person the PCs are looking for has listed themselves under a different name, which can be figured out through previous clues you've dropped. A concierge at the front desk must be bluffed or coerced without raising the alarm. A dirt floor crawls with poisonous stakes that will slither out of the way to avoid open flame. A few might follow at a distance and strike later. The PCs must convince a bouncer to let them in without confiscating their weapons. Once you've figured out what room 2 is, try to plant one or more clues in room 1 about potential solutions. That's important. Sometimes easier said than done. This ties the adventure together a little tighter, will delight the problem solvers, and be a backup for your players if they get stuck. Room 3, trick or setback. The purpose of this room is to build tension. Do this using a trick, trap, or setback. For example, after defeating a tough monster, the players think they've found the treasure and achieved their goal. They learn they've been tricked and the room is a false crypt. Depending on your game system, use this room to cater to any player or character type not yet served by the first 2 areas. Alternatively, give your group a double dose of gameplay that they enjoy the most, such as more combat or role-playing. Room 3 ideas. The PCs rescue several prisoners or hostages. However, the victim might be enemies in disguise, are booby-trapped, or create a dilemma as they plead to be escorted back to safety immediately. A collapsed structure blocks part of the area. The debris is dangerous and blocks nothing of importance, another trap, or a new threat. Contains a one-way exit. The PCs must return and deal with room 1 and 2 again. For instance, a teleport trap, a one-way door, a 2,000-foot water slide trap, or something like that. The PCs finally find the artifact required to defeat the villain, but the artifact is broken, cursed, or has parts missing, and clues reveal the solution lies ahead. Believing the object of the quest now lies within easy reach, the NPC companion turns traitor and betrays the PCs. Another potential payoff for Room 3 is to weaken the PCs as build up to a dramatic struggle in Room 4. It might contain a tough combat encounter, take down a key defense, exhaust an important resource, or make the party susceptible to a certain type of attack. For example, if Room 4 contains a mummy whose secret weakness is fire, then make Room 3 a troll lair, or another creature susceptible to fire, so the PCs might be tempted to burn off a lot of their magic oil, fire magic oil, or other flammable resources. See, that's resource management right there. How much do you have with you? This would turn a plain old troll battle into a gotcha once the PCs hit Room 4 and realize they're out of fire resources. Don't forget to dress Room 3 up with your theme elements. George says, I prefer the old ways of you can't carry 30 swords and unlimited arrows to go along with your 500,000 gold pieces. Yeah, we've looked at we've looked at that for different types of consumables. That was what part was part of Black Hack, right? Resource dice is probably in others as well. But you have 3 D4 torches in the party. If you don't roll a 1, your torch keeps going despite dust, wind, moisture, etc. If you lose a torch, you lose a die. Continue rolling until empty. I think that works well for certain things. Like some people have wanted to use that for like arrows too. My problem with that, I think it's potentially a good way to go, but my problem with it is that it seems like it's very difficult to plan then. Because if the goal of the resource management and the resource planning is to make your players make critical choices, then one of the things that I think they would need to know is how much they've got. And this makes, if you're rolling resource dice for different objects, you don't really know when they're expended or going to be expended. So I think I'm wondering, I haven't played with it, but I'm wondering if it starts to, will we have, it does add some tension. Like, do we have enough to get down there? Enough torchlight to do this exploration? Well, maybe, I don't know. But the maybe and I don't know comes from the fact that the torches are random or lasting a random amount of time. Whereas whereas I think I would want the I don't know to come from be like, well, we've got 3 torches and we know how long each torch lasts, but we don't know how many rooms we got to go through in that direction. But you could, if you're talking something about being better or worse outfitted, you could say that you have that your resource die are a D4 if you're poorly outfitted, a D6 if you're moderately well outfitted, and a D8 if you are if you're greatly outfitted. But then again, if you're greatly outfitted, that's adding. And I'm generally against adding randomness. If you did that, there's nothing that stops you from rolling a 1 on a D8, even though you're well outfitted with torches and losing it. Thank you, TSL Frontman. It's got to be simple. It's got to be simple. And we've talked about how there's probably some optimal number of resources that you need to track in a game that keeps things fun so that you know what resources, the players know what resources they need to track, which ones are significant, and then make decisions around that. I mean, like the hit points are a resource. So hit points are 1. If you're using a hit point based game, you got to complete this dungeon. And one of the resources you got to manage is your hit points. You lose those, this is over. Torches might be another. And in the wilderness, and those resources can change depending on what stage of the game you're in. Because if you're doing wilderness, then food may really matter. But once you get to the dungeon, if you're not on that time scale, food doesn't matter so much. But it's your torches that do. So we go on to room 4 after that. Room 4 is our climax, big battle, or conflict. This room is the big show. It's the final combat or conflict encounter of the dungeon. Use all the tactics you can summon to make this encounter memorable and entertaining. As always, generate interesting terrain that will impact the battle. Start or end with roleplay. Maybe the bad guy needs to stall for time to let the PC's buffs wear out, to wait for help to arrive, or to stir himself into rage. Perhaps the combat ends with the bad guy bleeding to death and a few short words can be exchanged. Or there will be helpless minions or prisoners to roleplay with once the threat is dealt with. So room 4 ideas include give the bad guy unexpected powers, abilities, or equipment. Previous rooms might contain warning signals or an alarm so the bad guy has had time to prepare. The bad guys try to settle things in an unusual way, such as through a wager or a duel. The layer is trapped. The bad guy knows where to avoid or can set off the traps at opportune moments. The bad guy reveals the big reward and threatens to break it or put it out of the PCs. To break it or put it out of the PCs. I guess that's the PC's reach, so they'll never be able to collect it. I don't think that so is supposed to be there. The bad guy has a secret weakness that the PCs figure out how to exploit. A variety of PCs and talents can be required to successfully complete the encounter. All right, if room 4 is our big showdown, then room 5, reward, revelation, plot twist. Here's your opportunity to change the player's bragging, we came, we saw, we slipped on a banana peel. Oh, to change the player's bragging to we came, we saw, we slipped on a banana peel. Room 5 doesn't always represent a complication or point of failure for the PCs, but it can. Room 5 doesn't need to be a physical location either. It can be a twist revealed in Room 4. Room 5 is where your creativity can shine and is often what will make the dungeon different and memorable from the other crawls of your campaigns. In addition, if you haven't supplied the reward yet for conquering the dungeon, here is a good place to put the object of the quest, chests of loot, or valuable information the PCs need to save the kingdom. As the counting tasks take over from recent thrilling combat tasks, this is also a good time to make a campaign or world revelation or plot twist. Perhaps the location of the next 5-room dungeon is uncovered, which would be a really good idea for a West March campaign, along with sufficient motivation to accept the quest. Maybe the identity of the bad guy is revealed. New clues and information pertaining to a major plot arc might be embedded in the treasure, perhaps sewn into a valuable carpet, drawn in painting, or written on a slip of paper stuffed into a scroll tube, or encoded in a data chip. So Room 5 ideas include another guardian awaits in the treasure container, a trap that resurrects or renews the challenge from Room 4. Bonus treasure is discovered that leads to another adventure, such as a piece of a magic item or a map fragment. A rival enters and tries to steal the reward while the PCs are weakened after a big challenge of Room 4. The object of the quest final reward isn't what it seems to or has a complication. For example, the kidnapped king doesn't want to return. The quest was a trick. By killing the dungeon's bad guy, the PCs have helped the campaign villain or rival. Perhaps the bad guy was the good guy under a curse, transformed or placed into a difficult circumstance. The bad guy turns out to be a PC's father. The true gruesome meaning behind a national holiday is discovered. A source of an alien race's hostility towards others is uncovered, transforming them from villains to sympathetic characters in the story. The true meaning of the prophecy or poem that led the PCs to the dungeon is finally understood, and it is not what the PCs thought. So that is our 5-dungeon room, or 5 different encounters that come together. Yeah, we've had it out on that with healing spells, healing word, potion, short rest, and then long rest. Hit points are largely irrelevant in 5e, which to me makes them not doing their part in resource management. I'm just talking about in general. Like if I were to have hit points in a game, then I would say, all right, if you're going to have hit points, and that's the way you're going to be tracking damage, that would be a great way to. That's an important resource to manage. If you don't need to manage them, they're probably not doing their job. Micah tends to agree. That's why I prefer systems or homebrew with harsher penalties and made my system able to run grim and gritty or calm and easy depending on how the group wants to play. All right, so what do we think about our 5-room dungeon here? Now you can download and get a whole bunch of examples here. 87 5-room dungeons, which I do have. But he wants you to download it, so I'm not going to. Well, let's see. Do I have that? Can I show one example dungeon? Let's see one example that he's built from this. Let me see if I've got it. Let me see if I got it easy. Should have thought to bring that up. But we'll take a look. I would like an example. So let's look at an example. I mean, it seems pretty straightforward, but I think it might take a bit more thought than you're thinking about. 5-room dungeons. Here we go. Let me remove this. Okay, so here is the guide. Let's look at one example. The 5-room recipe. Oh, he's got other information in here too, like how to create 5-room horror dungeons. Example: GM move with threats using Lord of the Rings. Example: GM move with threats using Lord of the Rings. A simple and fun way to run army battles, make your encounters intense. How to avoid a TPK when GMing intense encounters. How to avoid. Spikes of danger tease your players while filling them with fear. How to create your own plot factory, part 1, 2, 3, 4. The Elvis hook for PCs. All right, let's see. The community collection of 5-room dungeons. All right, which one of these looks cool? Palace of the Embalmers. Oh, got tons of these things. All right, let's just scroll down. This is a big file to load, apparently. Come on. We looked at cyclical dungeon designs. Do you remember when we looked at cyclic dungeon designs? We actually took a deep dive into cyclic dungeon designs. And then also, I forget whether it was jackweighing or jackwissing a dungeon. We talked about the pronunciation. We did quite a bit on dungeon design. Oh, come on, book. Load up. I wonder about integrating this with the cyclic dungeon design. The cyclic dungeon design. I'll pull that up in just a second. When it decides it wants to load. Because I did have up an example of like the cyclical dungeon design. And this isn't the original one. This is every now and then you run into an idea that kind of rewires your brain in a good way. For me, a recent occurrence of that was when I read Cyclic Dungeon Generation by Sursa Victory, based on Joris Dorman's 2017 roguelite Unexplored. If you haven't looked up Cyclical Dungeon Generation, like this, you probably should. As stated in the PDF, this blog article goes into more detail about the algorithm and system behind it. Sursa's Victory publication attempts to adapt Unexplored cycle for dungeon generations in tabletop role-playing games, and in my opinion, succeeds with flying colors. So in the cyclical dungeon generation, it specifies 12 different cycles that a dungeon can go through for the appropriate design of a dungeon. So, for example, this is a very basic dungeon cycle, a lock and key cycle. The dungeoneers are presented with a short path to the goal. However, the goal chamber contains a lock. A long path from the goal chamber leads to its corresponding key. The chamber containing the key features an exit back to the starting chamber, such as a one-way portal or door that only opens from the key's side. This exit allows the dungeoneers to loop back quickly to the goal. So we've got like 12 different structures of these, and we went through them all in here. The lock and key cycle is classic. Show how the players. So you could build like this. So if you're thinking about 5-room dungeons, so let's say, for a Westmarch style campaign, 4, that way they're not all exactly 5, but 4 to 6 rooms, maybe as many as 8 if they're short and small. I kind of think using some of these cycles in here would be a good way to build a dungeon. This lock and key cycle is classic, showing the players a locked door and have them return later with a key for that rewarding feeling. It's important to note that locks and keys are not necessarily literal in this context. It might involve an actual key in a locked door, but it can involve, say, an environmental hazard and a means to pass. Players might pass a pool of lava with a door on the other side serving as the lock, and the key might involve a lever to raise a bridge, allowing players to pass. I made a simple perchance generator, including 12 cycles. Note the black diamonds. Those are insertion points where a new cycle might start. Wait, what is this? So let's generate a cycle. 2 keys. The dungeoneers are presented with 2 different long paths through the cycle. Both paths eventually meet at the goal, which is a chamber that contains a lock. Near the midway point of each long path is a key. Both keys must be used, combined, or manipulated to open the lock. Terrain feature, pedestal, altar mechanism. Let's do it again. Okay, so lock and key cycle. I guess we're just cycling through all of the different foreshadowing loop. But the idea here is that so this dungeoneers are teased with a view of the goal from the start chamber. However, the dungeoneers are unable to reach the goal from the start chamber. The long path loops around, eventually leading the dungeoneers to the goal. But if you go through this and you go through everything we discussed, you actually cycle a cycle. So I believe, didn't say the diamonds were insertion points. So if you're trying to do a more complicated dungeon, you end up with a major cycle right here. So this is the main loop, perhaps the main loop of the dungeon. But then right here in the foreshadowing loop, you have to go through a secondary loop. Maybe you have to go through a false goal secondary loop. And we saw exactly how to build out a dungeon like that. But I don't know if we're doing these small dungeons for West Marches that you're going to have time for multiple cycle dungeons, for multi-cycle dungeons. You're going to end up with just needing one cycle. So, for example, let's try it out. Using the above generator, I get the foreshadowing loop. Okay, so we talked about that one. This means that we will first tease the actual goal while actual paths involves more trials and tribulations. I'm going to use draw IO to easily visualize our progress. This will allow me to slowly morph out a concept flow chart into an actual floor plan. So here we are starting here. We have a way to see the goal, but we have to go over here. So that's a four dungeon room right there. So if that's it, we're going to start right here. So here is our guardian. Here is our goal. We've got room 2, room 3. And then actually, if this is room 4, then we would need room 5 off of that, which might be our treasure chamber or something like that. Or this goal right here could be our treasure chamber that you can see here. And so you would put the main showdown right here and add another room in here. Now he says to keep things simple, we're going to do 2 subcycles, but that's going to get complex really fast, especially for West Marches. Let's see. Sort of pseudocode for random dungeon making. I get it. Micah says cyclical dungeon with each cycle as a 5-room dungeon would work for game design. Then meta that section as part of the larger cycle pattern. Cyclical dungeon with each cycle as a 5-room dungeon would work for game design. Then meta that section as part of the right. Yes. Now that way you could do like, so if each cycle were a 5-room dungeon and you had all of them structured together, then you could you could use it that way. Absolutely. And especially if you wanted, that would be a great way to do a larger dungeon, especially if you had a safe haven for the players to go to relatively nearby. Then they go down into the next cycle. George says Misty step from start to goal and circumvent the complexity. So in here, we got the first sub-cycle right here. Start, key 1, key 2. I'm going to roll again for the first node in our base cycle. And they get the 2 keys. So we have 2 long paths, each featuring a key. Both keys are needed to pass the lock, in which case is a lethal trap, which means to disable or evade. I decide to interpret 2 long paths as having 3 rooms each. The room with the lock is the goal of the first subcycle. So this right here, now we're starting. So this is the main loop. You still see the main loop here. But now we got to go through 2 different paths to get the keys to get through the lock in this one. So this is already probably too much gameplay for a 2-hour or 3-hour dungeon. But I do think it makes very interesting dungeons. Then the second subcycle became Hidden Shortcut. The Dungeoneers are presented with a long and dangerous path to the goal. However, a secret short or less dangerous path to the goal is hidden or near the start chamber. So we add a hidden shortcut. I will draw this in our graph using a thick gray line, using a dark gray line. I will interpret long paths as 3 rooms once again. So this cycle of the dungeon, you can go the long way right here, or there is a shortcut. If you find it, you can get through right here. Putting it all together, the foreshadowing, that's the main cycle, 2 keys, the first sub-cycle, hidden shortcut, the second sub-cycle. And then he starts numbering these things, and then starts to come up with a layout. So start here, goal here, because we're foreshadowing it here. But then here is how the room structure actually lays out. Cool. I still keep a copy of the flowchart version. The above version is a move toward a general layout. Now we can start using final details and using Dungeon Scrawl for that, which I didn't know about, but we actually brought that up yesterday. We were introduced to Dungeon Scrawl yesterday. So I was like, oh yeah, this looks like what we were looking at. So now I've added a few doors and rooms here that don't break the fundamental flow of the dungeon, but break up the linearity a bit. The dungeon is still properly jackwayed. Oh, okay. So we bring up the jackwayed dungeon too. Look that up. Look up the cycle generation. Look up the jackwaying if you are still looking for something to watch. If you're sitting here painting something, or you want to get into something deep, painting perhaps today on the holiday or something like that, or doing your own dungeon design, look that up because we went deep into that. But I do think it provides a cool general flow of things. And so that one major cycle with 2 subcycles became something that looks like this. But that does strike me as potentially a lot for a 1-session dungeon if you've got to get there and get back. So it might be 1 cycle. These 5 5-room dungeons need to be 1 cycle. But I do really like what he did with it. I really do. Did my PDF ever come up? Let's see. Not really. Huh. Well, I would have liked to have taken a look at an example of a 5-room dungeon. But my PDF is not loading. It is still a bunch of blank pages. Let me try one other thing real quick. See if another program will pull it up. Oh, it says there was an error opening this file. It could not be opened. Okay, well, maybe we won't look at that. I'll have to download it again or something like that. Kind of like Hamlet acts as a base where you do various parts of the end goal of Temple of the Elemental Evil. Right, yes. Gnomish Bazaar is having a huge minis sale. Gnomish Bazaar. I am not familiar with them. Summer sale. Over 2,000 items on sale at 30% off MSRP. Reaper, WizKids, Army Painter, Vallejo, Mantic. Oh, so if you need some stuff. All right. Thank you for letting us know. I'm going to need some more paints eventually. All right. So Cronus Crichton says multi-session module with differing ways that can have an outcome. They are often kind of more fun. So there's probably some way to blend both of them into a West Marches style game. All right. Well, everybody, this is, like I said, I was planning on this one being a bit shorter because it's the holiday. I'm going to sit here and I'm going to do some more writing here. But I hope that you have a great day. If you are in the United States and you're celebrating Independence Day today, I hope you have a wonderful day. Go be with friends, be with family. Hey, maybe do some gaming. This might be a great opportunity, an excuse to do some in-person gaming. I hope that you get to have some in-person gaming. No live stream tonight, no Table Talk live stream tonight because of the holiday. Everybody have a great time. Be constructive, be productive, and grind on. I will see you tomorrow. Later, everybody.